Face it, we all have the same boring features, 2 eyes above a nose and a mouth. To an alien, we'd probably look as similar as a flock of sheep. Yet we humans are highly skilled experts at telling each other apart.
The ability to recognize faces is a superpower that we tend to not recognize. We take it for granted.
We see faces everywhere, but of course we make mistakes. And sometimes we see faces in trees and clouds.
Face recognition is one of our brain's most sophisticated functions, but until recently, it's been as mysterious as the Mona Lisa's smile. Some people are face blind and can't recognize almost anyone at all.
Trying to differentiate people is very much for me like trying to differentiate golden retrievers. How do you tell one human being from another?
Others are called super recognizers and remember almost every face they've seen.
If I was given a face of a known predator, I found him in amongst 42,000 people.
I look at the eyes. Do they have thick eyebrows? Do they meet in the middle?
In the last decade, scientists are cracking our brain's facial code, while computers surpass us at recognizing faces. But they're also creating a new Big Brother-style surveillance that disturbs many.
It's a technology that perpetuates discrimination and harms people of color and harms Black communities.
They can learn to recognize when a person is happy, when a person is sad. For me, personally, this goes too far.
There's a lot more that meets the eye in your face. Our remarkable face skills are already developing even 1 hour after birth. Newborns see extremely poorly, but they can quickly distinguish their mother's face from all others.
Newborns learn to recognize the mother's face on the first day of life, sometimes just within hours of birth, and look at the mom in preference to a stranger. This is a simulation of what mom might look like to a newborn. You can see that there's an oval, but the eyes and the mouth are really indistinct. So my mom initially is just a hairdo.
In experiments, newborns show a remarkable attraction to face-like shapes.
So if you show a baby just a little outline of a head with 3 blobs in it that are arranged like 2 eyes and a mouth, and you put that next to another outline that has those 3 blobs upside down, within minutes of birth, babies will look towards that face-like stimulus over and above the one that's upside down. So there seems to be this inborn preference for faces.
University of Toronto neuroscientist Kang Lee says this shows how hardwired we humans are to faces.
The ability to recognize face is actually programmed into our biology. So that's why as soon as we are born, we seek out faces in our environment. Even we barely open our eyes, we start to look for faces. And then we start to remember the faces.
In fact, there's growing evidence that even before birth, fetuses prefer face-like images.
They projected this pattern 2-1-1 to the womb, on the wall of the womb. And when the pattern was a face-like pattern, they looked longer compared to the inverted pattern.
Already in the womb, the fetus is drawn to something that has a face-like structure. We are specialists in human faces.
Our brains are so specialized at recognizing faces, we often see them where they aren't.
We see faces everywhere, whether they're there or not. In fact, I have a set of pictures in my lab that are everyday objects like sinks and blenders and green peppers. In fact, you can see a sink that looks sad depending on how that drain is shaped.
But there's a good evolutionary reason for why we seek out faces everywhere.
And this is because what's very adaptive from an evolutionary perspective is detecting that a face is in your environment. Our brain has evolved to be incredibly sensitive to the presence of a face, but of course we make mistakes. And sometimes we see faces in trees and clouds and objects.
A lot of our decisions are based upon our face recognition. The decision to fight, to flight, to mate, to be a friend, or to be a foe. All the decisions are based upon our ability to recognize faces correctly. And it's just so essential to humans. We have to have this ability.
And we don't like it when we fail to recognize a face.
We've all been in that situation where you're at a party or something and you're introduced to someone and you say, nice to meet you, and that person says, we've actually met before. And it's horrifyingly embarrassing.
Our facial recognition ability starts in infancy and improves steadily over decades as connections increase between neurons. The average person learns to recognize some 5,000 faces, including armies of celebrities we've never met. Do you recognize these? Are we really specialists in faces? The answer only came in 1980 in a famous experiment called the Thatcher illusion that literally upended our view of how we saw faces. Do these two faces of former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher look similar? They do to most of us, say experts. However, when rotated 180 degrees, we can instantly see how different they are.
So this was one of our first indications that when we look at upright human faces, we're processing them as a whole, as a gestalt.
It demonstrates to us how much we are sensitive to this specific arrangement of two eyes, nose, and a mouth.
I think that face recognition is so important to all of us because it drives our lives. Every interaction we have with any other human requires us to recognize that person. If we couldn't recognize that person, I rather suspect that we wouldn't have the society we have today.
Yet some people are utterly incapable of recognizing any face at all. Carla Holmes has had face blindness since birth. She can't tell faces apart, a condition called prosopagnosia.
When I look at people's faces, it's kind of like looking at a golden retriever, a dog. When you see that dogs also have a nose and eyes and a mouth, but we don't expect to be able to tell easily one golden retriever from another. Trying to differentiate people is very much for me like trying to differentiate golden retrievers. How do you tell one human being from another? I can never really be sure that I see who I think I see. It's totally destabilizing.
Despite this, Carla has been Reverend of St. Thomas Congregation in Montreal for a decade.
It's what we do that's important. The more we become loving, that's the sign of the Holy Spirit.
Carla admits she still can't tell her flock apart, which can cause some members pain.
Everyone wants to be known, especially by their priest. They don't want to think that they're just a faceless entity. And people don't expect that I don't recognize them and their feelings get hurt. And I understand. I get it.
It can get worse. Carla recalls walking with a friend last year who greeted two young women on the street.
Do you know Doris? My friend looked over at these two young women, and I thought to myself, how is it that she knows two random people walking down the street?
Exactly. Mom, come on. You do this all the time. You know her. You've met her before.
Yeah, of course I have. I was looking at my daughter, indeed, but I did not recognize her. I know who my daughter is, obviously, but visuals are not part of my way of seeing my daughter. It was her voice that clued me in that it was her.
I could see that my mom was just kind of doing that smile thing that she does when she wants people to see that she's open to remember who you are, but she doesn't quite know yet. And I had to snap her out of it. I was like, Mom, wake up, it's your daughter. I saw you this morning, you know? And when she gives me that look, it's shocking because she's my mom and we have a very close relationship.
Carla is not that unusual, say those who study people with this condition. In fact, 2% of us have face blindness.
That just shows that there'll be many people listening to this right now who have this condition but didn't realize that they had it. A couple of famous celebrities they can't recognize. They can't recognize their families, their loved ones, or themselves.
Among those with the condition are naturalist Jane Goodall, British writer Stephen Fry, Apple computer genius Steve Wozniak, and actor Brad Pitt. Brilliant neurologist and author Oliver Sacks was so afflicted he had close friends wear name tags at his own dinner parties. Sometimes, Carla can't even recognize herself.
If I'm standing in the bathroom and I see someone in the mirror, like, who else is it going to be, right? So I can pretty well do that. The problem with mirrors is if I'm in a department store where there's lots of different mirrors, and I see myself on an angle, I don't realize that it's me. It's my reflection. I don't recognize that person as being me.
I've got another patient who almost walked into a mirror in a department store because he thought someone was walking towards him, and then someone had to stop him because he was about to walk into a mirror. So it can be that severe.
Carla manages by focusing on things like people's gait, voices, or birthmarks.
They've got no problem with recognizing someone from their voice, from their clothing, even their walking style. So they can recognize people, they just can't recognize them from this.
But for Carla, her inability seems normal. It's the rest of us she finds extraordinary.
When I think about how people who are not face blind look at a face, it's as if they have some kind of a superpower. How can they, I ask myself? It's like a superpower.
What is behind this mysterious condition? Scientists keep seeking clues.
There's a patient who couldn't recognize fruits and vegetables, but could tell you that this was Jack Nicholson. Then you have my patient, David, who can tell you that that's an apple and a pear, but can't tell you that this is Jack Nicholson. And what that is research gold, because it demonstrates that these two skills must be separate. That allows one patient to be good at fruits and vegetables but bad at faces, and the other to be the other way around.
The recent discovery of how widespread this disorder is has sent neurobiologists scurrying to see how humans, even other animals, recognize each other. In experiments, faces can be identified by many animals like lions, monkeys, dogs, cats, and sheep. In one Cambridge study, sheep learned to recognize the faces of over 50 other sheep and at least 10 humans, including Barack Obama. And they remembered them for 2 years. But even animals have trouble recognizing faces that are upside down. In another study, tropical fish were trained to remember and recognize a few faces, then spit when they saw a familiar one among strange ones. Research into face blindness has also led scientists in a new direction, to those whose ability to recognize faces is utterly astonishing. Some people have extraordinary memories for faces, like private investigator Kelly Desborough. They're called super recognizers.
Morgan Freeman, absolutely. Sandra Oh, clearly Jennifer Aniston. That's my favourites, David Attenborough. Hugh Grant all day long.
Kelly can remember almost everyone she's ever met, no matter how long ago or how little she knew them.
I was standing in the street. I just glanced over my shoulder for just a second, and I saw a girl standing a few people behind me, and I knew in that instant that it was my friend's sister, who I hadn't seen for 36 years. And it wasn't my friend, it was my friend's sister.
Psychologist Josh Davis was among the first to study super recognizers. He tests people regularly for this superpower.
I was very surprised when I first heard about the idea of super recognizers. A super recognizer is someone who has exceptionally good face recognition abilities. They seem to have a far greater capacity in their brains, if you like, a storage of the number of faces, and also they can remember them for a lot longer. So they can see through the changes in appearance that perhaps the rest of us wouldn't be able to do.
In 2012, Davis was asked to help test and set up a special squad of super recognizers working for police at New Scotland Yard. They were said to never forget a face. Officer Mike Neville started the squad and headed it for 4 years.
The light bulb moment for me was when I saw this presentation about how certain people might be better at faces. And I just thought, yes, we've got to find these super recognizers because they'll be very useful to solving lots of crime.
Eventually, Neville had about 150 police officers across London he could call on as super recognizers, and many patrolled large public events looking for known criminals or suspected terrorists.
So I'm looking straight down Victoria Street. You can see the male walking towards me. He's a white male, got slightly greying hair, and he's got lobed ears, very detailed inside ears, and a strong jaw.
Former detective Kenny Long was part of the super recognizer squad.
So the area of the face that's most important to me, the ears first of all, and then I look at the eyes, what is the depth of their eyes? Have they got bulges below their eyes? Have they got wrinkles under their eyes? Do they have thick eyebrows? Do they meet in the middle? Is there spacing there? Then you can go down to the nose. Is there a lump on their bridge? Do their nostrils flare? Have they got a double chin? As a super recognizer, when you do look at a face, you are making measurements. I've never brought a tape measure with me because, you know, I think I've got one inbuilt.
So you can even see people from just the smallest part of their face. You can recognise them from a part of their chin or an ear. I was watching a drama on TV and the camera panned around and there was an actor sitting at a desk with his back to the camera. And I just said to myself, oh, that's Tim McInerney. And then I thought, how do you know that's Tim McInerney? You can only see the back of his head. And I thought, am I going to be right? The camera pans round a bit more and the actor, Tim McInerney, it's him. I don't tend to concentrate on any specific feature of the face. I just look at the whole shape.
Kelly Desborough scored higher than any other super recognizer Josh Davis has tested. Today, she does police contract work for a private surveillance company called Super Recognizers International. She spots suspected criminals like pickpockets at crowded places like London's Wembley Stadium.
I was given a face of a known predator that we were trying to find, and I found him in amongst 42,000 people. It's my brain. Something inside me says yes or no, and it's as quick as that. It's just a millisecond often.
So, could you be a super recognizer too? How good are you at recognizing faces? Try the balaclava test Kelly did. What celebrities are behind the masks? You have only a few seconds like she did. Did you find that hard? Then don't try this test. One of many Kelly did to be classified as a super recognizer. First, you see a suspect briefly. Then you must pick him out of an array, though normally there are 10 days between the tasks.
Number 6. Number 2. Number 6. 14 out of 14.
Well done, that's brilliant.
Kelly combs through thousands of hours of CCTV footage looking for wanted criminals. The best supers can see through any disguise, as in this famous police case during the London riots. A fully masked man attacks someone, but is still identified by a super recognizer.
He's got a hat on, almost the top of his head is covered. All you get as he walks away is he looks around, he turns around, and you see this look at, you get his eyes here. To me, that is the iconic super recognizer identification that he was identified simply by his eyes.
In recent times, this skill is especially useful.
People all around the world are wearing masks now. So will this impair my ability to recognise faces? And I've found that it doesn't. Just looking at eyes can give us a great insight into whether we're making the right idea or not.
You're looking at possible wrinkles in their face, you're looking at eyelids, you're looking at space in between the eyes, you're looking at the top of their nose for the bridge. There's still many features you can see, even when they are wearing masks.
Like many face-blind people, Carla always thought others struggled with faces like she did. She only discovered she was face-blind a decade ago, when she tried a simple Name That Celebrity test online.
Typically, when you do a test like that, they give you faces, but they don't show you their hair or their clothes or anything. And it was kind of terrifying, actually, when I first did it. I didn't recognize the Queen. I didn't recognize Elvis Presley. I didn't recognize Barack Obama. The Beatles. These are faces that are very familiar to me, and I still did not recognize them. Out of context and without all the things that I use subconsciously for identifiers.
Today, Carla wonders if this long unrecognized problem didn't have an impact on her childhood.
When I was a little girl, I was quite a loner. I always kind of thought that people were unfriendly, that no one really wanted to be my friend. And looking back at it now, I'm just wondering whether my responses to them were not showing them that I didn't recognize who they were. I think, yeah, they might have thought that I was standoffish or arrogant, or that I was making the decision not to be friendly.
Actor Brad Pitt says he suffered similar problems to Carla.
So many people hate me because they think I'm disrespecting them. You get this thing like, you're being egotistical, you're being conceited. But it's a mystery to me, man. I can't grasp a face.
Studies comparing super recognizers with the face blind suggest they have a slightly larger fusiform gyrus, a spindle-shaped region in the brain. It shows more activity when looking at facial images.
There seems to be an area in the brain called the fusiform gyrus that a lot of studies have tended to find is activated more when humans are seeing faces. And it may just be that super recognizers are using areas like this in a more specialist, efficient manner than the rest of us.
But eye-tracking experiments suggest super recognizers also instinctively see faces differently than most of us.
This triangle here, that triangle is where all of the information is. I could put on weight, I could grow my hair, but this triangle seems to have some sort of code within it, and maybe super recognizers have got a really acute sense of that, which is why super recognizers often can recognize someone from childhood who they haven't seen for 40 years, because that configuration won't change.
The legendary Tina Turner.
Like the face blind, super recognizers' skills are not related to IQ, education, or other memory tasks.
Growing body of research has suggested that super recognition is about faces only. When you test super recognizers with object recognition, things like cars, mushrooms, chairs, flowers, actually, they're just average at those sorts of tasks.
As a super recognizer, it's only with faces for me. I can't recognise objects, and if the missus gives me a list to go down to the shop with, even if there's only 4 items, I won't remember.
I'm absolutely awful at remembering names. So this kind of thing doesn't tally. It's obviously just a visual thing. I really am bad at remembering names.
Being a super recognizer can be a double-edged sword. Some feel the need to hide their superpower so they won't be seen as stalkers.
You'll look at someone thinking, I actually know that person, but you don't know them. And they're looking at you, panicked, why is this guy really staring at me? There's a super recognizer. The worst thing is you can't actually turn it off. Unfortunately, it's a gift and it's a pain.
You imagine that you are at a theatre and you recognise someone who was at the theatre last year in the audience. And you go, I saw you in the audience last year. That person's going to think you're a stalker. So you can imagine that they perhaps would want to hide their skills in those sort of circumstances.
In my brain, I've got tens of thousands of faces. I wish some would go away, but they're stuck there, unfortunately.
Can people be trained to become super recognizers? So far, evidence suggests the ability is mostly genetic.
We don't think we can train people to become super recognizers. There's a spectrum of skills. Some people are really good, some people are really bad. Most of us appear on the middle. And I wonder whether they're a little bit like Usain Bolt, fastest man in the world, got this raw ability in him that none of us have.
But limited exposure to faces can also impede people's genetic ability.
As you can imagine, if you live in a tiny village in the middle of nowhere and you hardly meet anyone, your face recognition skills do not need to develop very strongly. The person who goes to a normal school with lots of children tends to be better as an adult at face recognition. So there is some experience going on there. It's not just about genetics.
Today, there are eerie new challenges for us all in recognizing faces, as computers generate countless artificial ones, like these and others you've seen in this film. All were taken from a site called "This Person Does Not Exist." Just how does the human brain identify faces? It's a mystery scientists have slowly been solving. In a famous experiment in 2005, neuroscientist Rodrigo Quian Quiroga attached electrodes to patients going through brain surgery. Then he showed them photos of celebrities while monitoring individual brain cells, called neurons, and made a heralded discovery.
There was one patient where I found one individual neuron that I could identify firing to Jennifer Aniston, no matter what. So I show any picture of Jennifer Aniston, the neuron will fire, will be active. If I show a picture of any other person, the neuron will be silent. And I still remember I was in front of the computer and I just jumped. I just jumped because I couldn't believe my eye. And then people start talking about the Jennifer Aniston neuron.
Many scientists thought something similar might occur elsewhere in the face patch area. A popular theory was that each neuron was sensitive to one particular face, one for Jennifer Aniston, and perhaps another for Oprah or your grandmother. It sounds far-fetched, but a stunning 2004 monkey study by neuroscientists Weinrich Freiwald and Doris Tsao suggests the theory isn't that far off. They placed a tiny electrode into one area of a monkey's brain and recorded the firing of single cells as the monkey watched various images. They showed the monkey over 100 of these images, some faces, some not, while monitoring one cell in the face patch area. They got a stunning result, as we can hear each time the neuron fires, making a clicking sound. Can you hear when this cell responds? Listen.
So what I hope you can hear by now is that every time there's a face shown, there's also a response of the cell. When there's no face shown, there is no firing of the cell. This cell kind of has a job. The cell's job is to signal when there's a face, and in that sense, it's a face detector.
The neuron was only fooled occasionally by objects that resemble faces, such as a green pepper. A reminder, we humans see faces everywhere.
It is a trade-off. You certainly don't want to miss a tiger or an enemy, so it's better to think that a pepper is a face rather than miss an enemy or a predator that you don't recognize.
Their next experiment was even more remarkable. They found a second area of face neurons that only reacted to specific features, even on these simple cartoon faces. When they added or subtracted any one feature, like a nose or hair, it's easy to hear how one cell would respond.
So what you can hear is a neuron responding to the presence of hair.
Other face neurons are dedicated to identifying more facial features, like the distance between the eyes, the shape of the hairline, and the set of the mouth. Yet these are just the worker neurons of the brain's face region. Freiwald's team found another brain area where an executive cell put the face features together, like a jigsaw puzzle, to identify one specific person.
If you listen closely, you will probably hear that the cell is only responding to the features of this one blonde boy. Not another blonde boy, not another face, and it doesn't matter which way the face is presented.
Again, the scientists were overwhelmed by the results. Together, the experiments revealed the underlying neurological code to how humans see faces.
This was an absolutely astonishing experience. It was almost overwhelming that despite the fact that faces are very complex, the way the brain looks at them is very simple and very beautiful.
The discoveries were a much celebrated breakthrough in understanding facial recognition. But they also highlighted a fast-growing question that computer scientists were already hard at work answering. If it's so simple for our brains to recognize faces, why can't computers learn to be even better than us? For decades, scientists tried to train computers to match our human face recognition skills and failed. But in the last decade, computers got faster and mimicked our brain's neural network to make the breakthrough.
What it can do today is, many, many times better than it was able to do even 2 or 3 years ago, never mind a decade ago.
In essence, the computer takes a photo of your face and precisely measures its unique facial spacing, like the gap between your eyebrows or the width of your forehead. But that's exactly what we humans do all the time without knowing it. We think we identify people from their eyes, nose, and mouth, but our brain knows these change over time and unconsciously monitors deeper characteristics.
Think about the shape of an eye. As I look surprised, put on eye makeup, age, develop wrinkles, its shape changes. It's not a reliable cue to who I am. Think about my mouth. As I put on lipstick, as I talk, as I laugh, the shape of my mouth changes. What never changes is how far my mouth is from the bottom of my chin or from my eyes. It comes from the bone structure of the face, so it's going to be the same when you're 20 and when you're 80.
When you recognize a face, you're doing zillion computations that go in parallel and that we are not conscious of. I mean, you are recognizing the distance between the eyes or the length of your nose and how big is your forehead and so on. And we're not aware of that. I don't see the distance between your eyes. I see your face. So we are conscious of the final product, but it's unconscious processing.
We don't think about, okay, now I will measure the distance between the nose and the mouth, and this will help me to recognize you later. This is something that our system is tuned, is wired to do in a sense, and we do it automatically. We don't think about that.
So the ability to recognize faces is a superpower that we tend to not recognize. We take it for granted. We do it so casually, just like breathing, almost like breathing. We walk around, we see faces, recognize who they are, just like we breathe.
Now, super-fast computers are learning to do deliberately what our brain's neurons do naturally. Overnight, we're surrounded by computers that can identify human faces far better than us. Many airport security checks now use face recognition like fingerprints. Also, people routinely pay for coffee and use ATMs for selfie payments. Many people think face recognition can soon be used to help those with face blindness. Barry Sandrew is a Harvard neuroscientist who's working on an app to help people like himself.
Why did I develop an application for facial recognition? Well, I have face blindness. I have trouble recognizing faces, and I've always had that problem. It's intended for people who have facial blindness so that they can recognize people that they should, in fact, know.
Sandrew's app can store the photo of anyone you meet, then instantly identify them. He hopes to create a personalized face bank for Reverend Carla to help her identify her church members.
And I think that we have technology today that will allow her to not only recognize the congregant, but also recognize the congregant's partner, the kids, 97% or better accuracy. I think that'll be a very special thing for the congregant and the congregation.
But will it work to help Carla and eventually, perhaps all of us?
People like me were a disaster, no? I mean, I'm just meet you perhaps tomorrow and I won't remember the face because I'm not good myself. A big chunk of my work is on memory, and my memory is horrible.
So I'm afraid that I'm absolutely terrible at recognizing faces. I'm definitely in the lower half of the ability range, and the more I study super recognizers, the worse I feel I am.
For now, the biggest growth of face recognition technology is in police surveillance, where it's used to spot wanted criminals or terror suspects. In England, super recognizers now work for many police departments in London and elsewhere in the country. Detective Kenny Long retired to work with a surveillance company called Digital Barriers. He oversees computers that are now almost as good as the best super recognizers, says company CEO Zach Doffman.
The easiest way for people to think about it is it's mimicking the human brain. So in essence, we're teaching a computer how to replicate what a human being would do, but to do so on a fast and unimaginably large scale. And that is the real game changer for the technology. We can't tell you exactly why the computer sometimes makes the inferences, makes the decisions it makes, but it just gets better at learning all the time, which is exactly how you recognize people that you're familiar with. The technology is better able to recognize more people than any human being is able to do.
But is it as accurate as computer experts say? A company called Clearview AI sold facial recognition software to over 600 police forces in the US, Europe, and elsewhere that contained over 3 billion faces. It was all scraped secretly off sites like Facebook and Twitter. This could identify activists at a protest or strangers on the subway, revealing not just their names, but their address and whom they know. Yet despite its supposedly all-seeing eye, studies show face recognition technology makes terrible mistakes, especially with people of color.
It's a technology that perpetuates discrimination and harms people of color and harms Black communities specifically.
Ottawa-based Deborah Raji works for the Algorithmic Justice League, a research group fighting hidden racism in face recognition machines. She helped conduct an audit of companies like Amazon and found error rates of 35% for women of color, compared to 3% for Caucasians.
There's already been multiple cases of people of color being misidentified and then falsely arrested.
The problem? These supposedly super recognizer computers sold to police were trained on millions of faces, but most were white or Asian, so they make mistakes with people of color.
But the people that build this technology are just not being careful. And, some could argue maybe they're not being careful because they don't care. And, to be frank, I think we should have very strict regulations that force them to behave well, whether or not they care.
Amazon was initially reluctant to reinvent their algorithm, but in 2021, they voluntarily suspended selling face recognition software to police. So did the leading maker of police body cameras, Axon, saying the technology is not currently reliable enough to ethically justify its use.
I don't think that's enough. I don't think we should depend on these companies to make that decision on their own. I think there should be some regulatory push to pull these products off of the market as we continue to have the conversation.
Computers may eventually overcome this programming bias, but ironically, it duplicates a problem most humans have too. We're very poor at identifying other races.
Actually, when we are born, we have no difficulty recognize faces of people from all races of the world. So by about 9 months of age, they are only going to be able to recognize the faces of their own race. They lose that ability they already had at the 3 months of age. People all over the world have the very similar feeling when they encounter people from other nationalities or races. That is, they think they all look the same. In Canada, for example, we consider this to be a racist notion. But this perception actually is universal all over the world.
When Li first moved to the West from China, he says he couldn't tell most Caucasian people apart for 2 years, even his own colleagues and students.
When I first arrived, all the Caucasian faces looked the same to me, except they may be, the only way I can could tell them apart is I say, okay, this is a man, this is the woman, this is the old man, this is the old woman, and a young man, young woman. These are the things I could do. But in terms of who these people are, I had a tremendous difficulty. And slowly, my ability to recognize Caucasian faces or black faces become better and better.
So we don't feel badly when we listen to people speaking another language on the bus and can't really understand it. But we do feel badly when we struggle to recognize people of an ethnicity other than our own. And people need to recognize that this is part of human development. It's a universal phenomenon. When I spent a month in China, I had a very hard time learning the faces of the students in that lab. So it's universal, and it starts in infancy.
But the problem is easy to overcome when you're young, because it's not about race, it's about exposure. In one study, Korean orphans brought up by Caucasian families in France were tested on identifying Korean faces and Caucasian ones.
Guess what? They were better at the white face than the Korean faces. It's not to do with your genetics, it's to do with your environment. And they were brought up in a white environment, they got good at recognizing white faces. The lesson here is to get your kids to experience lots of different ethnicities when they're younger.
There are further issues too for everyone, say human rights advocates. Capturing people's faces as they go about their daily lives is a threat to privacy, especially when done without their knowledge.
We already know that the technology is incredibly dangerous for people of color when it does not work. That being said, it's also incredibly dangerous for everyone when it does work. It's very difficult to build a facial recognition model without collecting millions of faces. And the act of collecting millions of faces is something that will require the violation of privacy. So I think my face belongs to me. I definitely should have the right to opt out of any system, particularly a system that puts me at such risk.
The question that we as citizens and our politicians and lawmakers need to debate is what is the appropriate use of the technology? And whilst I can absolutely see the case to using facial recognition to pull bad guys off the street, really bad guys off the street, but do I want my kids to be subjected to facial or this kind of AI technology to make sure they're listening to their teachers in class? I absolutely do not.
Yet one country is already determined to own the faces of all its citizens in a cross between science and science fiction. It's China, brave new world of face recognition. Here in Shanghai, using your face is routine when paying for things like fast food. But despite the errors of face recognition technology, China's government uses it to monitor many of its 1.4 billion people. There are over 300 million CCTV cameras on the streets. One camera for every 5 people.
The Chinese police surveillance system is built towards abusing human rights to implement an Orwellian society.
Face recognition is used to identify those breaking the law, even if they're just jaywalking. Suspects are fined, and sometimes their photos are displayed on digital billboards for public shaming.
And I was in Shanghai, and I was with a person. She showed me like a traffic light. She said, look, this camera, if you cross with a pedestrian red light, there will be some AI identifying your face, and then you will get a ticket sent to you. And I was like, that's not good. I mean, that's going too far. But yeah, I mean, that's the future. That may happen.
Critics fear a Big Brother society, as in Xinjiang province, where surveillance systems constantly watch 1 million of China's Uyghur Muslim minority.
The whole region is being blanketed by these surveillance systems. You can draw essentially a direct line between these systems and people being held in political education camps for practicing religion or expressing their identity. So this 1 million people has been scientifically targeted for their anti-government thinking. No other governments could have done that in the past. No emperor, no dictator. And what does it say about human future going forward?
Yet we are only at the birth of facial recognition. Our faces already reveal a lot more than simply who we are.
When I see your face, I'm reading your mind somehow. I don't want to get intrusive. I don't want to get into your thoughts. But I'm reading a lot from your face, from your expression. So for example, if I will focus on your eyes, and you are very sad, or you are angry, or you are very excited, I can read that somehow. And that's, I mean, you don't have it in other parts of the body. I think the face, and particularly the eyes, is very important to understand each other's emotions.
Chinese tech companies are already experimenting with emotional recognition, technology that may discern our emotions and sexual preferences based on the set of our eyes or mouth. Google and Facebook worked on technology to read the twitch of a lip or an eyebrow to decode our thoughts. Even surveillance specialist Zach Doffman thinks that's scary.
If you put enough stuff through the machine learning algorithms, they can learn to recognize when a person is happy, when a person is sad, when they're engaged, when they're concentrating, when they're listening. For me, personally, this goes too far.
People will actually also try to build these models to predict things like criminality from your face, predict how hireable you are from your face. That kind of thing is becoming more and more common. I think that 1984 vision is really scary, but also something that is kind of already here.
So is face recognition just a threat to our privacy and freedom that will make everyone on Earth knowable? Or is it a blessing that can also help many?
Live and let live. We're so happy. I'll do what I want as long as it...
Today, Carla Holmes is meeting some congregants after services, but she's hoping to see them in a different way. Harvard neurologist Barry Sandrew has created a personalized app that should help her recognize some members for the first time.
Oh, Gladys, how you doing?
Hi, Carla.
Hey, Norm, how are you?
I'm doing well, Reverend. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good. Hey, Carlos.
Hi.
So what are you, anything planned for this afternoon?
Cooking for the week.
Oh, cooking. Oh,
Yes.
okay. You want to make extra, I'll put some in my freezer.
Okay.
That's fabulous.
Today it was different. She recognized me as I came out right away. So I felt very good about that. To know, it's good for her and it's good for us as a congregation.
Sometimes she passes you by and she doesn't recognize you. And I mean, it's not a great feeling, but I feel like this app could really help that.
The best part was feeling sure when that it wasn't my imagination or it wasn't my best guess, that I was sure that that was that person. That happens to me almost never. And that feeling was wonderful. The worst part of it was I have to actually look at the app and then look up. If I had glasses with this kind of app, that would be so much more helpful. I wouldn't have to do this. I might have to do that, but that's okay. That's kind of cute to do that, so not a big problem.
Who knows? Perhaps someday Carla and others can experience something closer to what most of us take for granted, our remarkable superpower for recognizing each other.